All right, so here we are. So welcome everybody to the Better Breathing for Mountain Biking program webinar. So if you're watching this, then you've purchased the program, and my intention with this is to just go over the program, go over the stuff in it, answer any questions that people may have. I had a few people email questions in, so I'll make sure that I get to those. But yeah, just really I want people to be able to use the program. And usually if there's confusion or questions or anything like that, that can create the friction that can stop them from doing it. So I just wanted to do everything that I could to give people, what they needed to be able to get the program going and get the most out of it. So real quick, I won't, go over this too long. Cause I'm sure, again, if you're watching this, you probably have heard my personal story. But I've been a trainer now for, shoot, man, like 25 years, almost 25 years as a professional certified fitness trainer, and been working with mountain bikers since 2005, been riding myself since 2000. And so I've had the chance to work with riders at all levels. And there's every once in a while I'll come across something that makes me go like, dang, where has this really been all of my coaching career? And why am I figuring this out just now? And breathing, especially the stuff that I'm going to go over here, is one of those things. I've had exposure to breathing and proper breathing techniques, and I tried to implement them with myself and my clients, but I was really just kind of scratching the surface of what you could do with breathing and breath work. And so what happened for me was I had a buddy who started doing the Wim Hof method. And Wim Hof is a very interesting character. If you haven't come across him, you should Google him sometime. But he has a breathing technique. It's a super ventilation breathing technique. That's the one in the program that where he's borrowing it from other places. We're borrowing it from him, if you want to say it that way. But anyways, my buddy started doing the Wim Hof technique, breathing technique. And then he started telling me about the results that he was seeing with it. And one, he was telling me about, like, while he was doing it, it was pretty crazy how long he was able to hold his breath, like the super ventilation technique where you're taking 30 to 40, like really big inhales and exhales. And you're able to hold your breath on an exhale for quite a long period of time after doing that, because you've blown off a bunch of CO2. And he was experiencing some interesting results as well. He's a volunteer firefighter, and one of the things that they have to do is train with oxygen on, and because that's going to simulate, what they have to do in a fire. And so he could see how he was either going faster and using the same amount of oxygen, or how he was using less oxygen. And he told me he actually did like one test where they had to go around a track and see how long it took them to use up all their oxygen. And he went so long that the guy running the test just came over and just like stopped him and was like, dude, that's good, right? Everybody else had already run through all of their oxygen, and he was still going and had a plenty left. And so it was pretty obvious something's going on here, right? Like, he's more efficient, he's using less oxygen, and he's being more efficient. And so that really piqued my interest in like, okay, well, what's going on here? So I started getting into I did the Wim Hof technique stuff. I started doing that type of breathing. And that started leading me down this rabbit hole where I started to realize that through breath work, breathing drills, specific breathing techniques, you can manipulate your internal environment, right? You can change your chemistry and your hormones, and you can literally change your internal environment through purposeful breathing. And so the Wim Hof method was my first exposure to manipulating CO2, right? Like purposefully manipulating carbon dioxide. And I found out that you can either through lowering it or raising it, you can have an effect on the body. And so also started to find out that there's ways to use breathing to affect your HRV, or heart rate variability. And your heart rate variability is a measure of your autonomic nervous system, right? The nervous system that's running your heart rate and just all these subconscious things. I mean, and so your autonomic nervous system has two sides, right? Your sympathetic and parasympathetic. And this is where the fight and flight, the stress or rest and relax side of things comes into stuff. So your HRV, heart rate variability, is a look at your autonomic nervous system, specifically what is the balance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, and are you tipped more towards the fight or flight, or are you tipped more towards the rest and relax? And what kind of effect or things that you're doing having on that. HRV also has a correlation to aerobic fitness, and so the higher your heart rate variability, the more you are towards that rest and relax side in general, and the higher your aerobic fitness potential is as well. And so through specific breathing techniques that you can impact your heart rate variability. So these were the two like main areas that I saw like, oh wow, we can really have an impact on this. And so I wanted to create a program that would help riders learn what these tools are, and then how do I use these tools in my own training and riding and everyday life. And that's one of the cool things about this program, is that you don't have to, like, you can implement this with any program you're doing, or no program at all. You don't even have to be following a workout program, and you can implement several of the tools from this program to make an impact. You can be following another workout program, right? Like like if you follow one of my workout programs, but you can be using any workout program and still be able to gain benefit from this program, the Better Breathing program, because you're going to learn how to breathe better, which is going to improve any workout that you're doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the manual. I have it printed off here, right? I'm not going to read the manual to you guys, but I'm mainly going to use it as notes, right? Because like I said, that was my goal. So let's go through the manual, just kind of touch on the highlight stuff, any other in-depth things that maybe I didn't cover in the manual that can help you. And then we're going to go through the assessments. I'm going to take you guys through a couple of the breathing drills, and then again, just see if you guys have any questions or whatever from that. So, starting with the introduction, right? I do cover how I suggest to go through the program. And so, doing the assessments, we're going to do that here on the video. Doing your first breathe light session, we're going to do, take you through a sample breathe light session here on this video. Mouth taping, start taping your mouth at night. I'll go over that here in a minute. I forgot my freaking tape, so I'm gonna have to run off when that comes up and go grab some tape. So I remember everything else but that. So the other thing is, schedule your breathing drills. Again, people that schedule stuff are going to be more consistent with it. So when are you going to do it? Figure that out, because you do want to be consistent with that. Start your check-ins. I mean, all these things are things that you can do right away, right? And so, but anyway, so the introduction just covers like here's how I recommend that you start implementing this stuff in the program. And so if you have any questions on that, or if you have any questions on your specific situation, then obviously let me know, and James@bikejames.com, or ask a question here and I can help you out with that. So starting out, the importance of better breathing, right? So the first section is our foundational lifestyle. And so as I was looking at this stuff, I realized that these things kind of split up into two categories. And one is your foundational lifestyle, which is the kind of that foundation, the daily things, and kind of the health, right? Because remember, like, you want your fitness built on a foundation of health, because health and fitness are not the same things. You can be fit to do something and not be healthy from like a longevity and lack of disease standpoint. And so you want that foundational lifestyle stuff is that healthy foundation that you want to build your fitness peak on top of. And so that's where the second part, the performance stuff, comes in, is that performance aspect of it. So with the benefits of better breathing, and again, I'm not going to belabor this, because if you guys have invested in the program, then you believe in it to enough to have done that, right? And so, but just going through this, the big three benefits that I try to hammer into people's heads as to what breathing can do for you, right? The first is better performance, right? It will help you perform better. Just the increased muscle oxygenation, the improved CO2 tolerance, your ability to move better. That was a really interesting thing that I saw in the Oxygen Advantage certification that I did. Like that guy, Patrick McKeown, has just got like all the science behind this stuff. It's crazy. Like everything he does. Here's a study that shows this and a study that shows that. And like one of the studies that they did, the conclusion was that until you normalize breathing, you're not going to be able to normalize any movement patterns. And so like if you're into functional training, right? If you're saying like I'm doing functional training and you're not making sure that you are normalizing your breathing pattern, then there's no way that you can be moving properly. And so bad breathing habits affect how you move. And that's going to affect, you know, in the gym, it's going to affect you on the bike. And so again, kind of one of these little known things, you don't really think about breathing affecting how you move, but it has a big impact on how you move. Like if you're not breathing properly, it means you're using muscles that should be doing something else to help you breathe, and you're not using the muscles that should be helping you breathe to do that. And so there's no way that you can move efficiently if you have some muscles that are doing things that they weren't really designed for, trying to help you breathe, as opposed to, you know, using the muscles that are designed to do that. Your better recovery. And again, remember, you only, right, your results come from training plus recovery. And so recovery is getting a lot more, you know, press these days. And so people are appreciating the benefits of that, but improving, you know, sleep, you're decreasing inflammation, improving pH balance. Like, again, this internal environment that affects us so much, you can have a direct impact on with your breathing, right? And then the mindset stuff. And this is kind of where the HRV stuff comes in to some degree, because again, we're talking about that balance between the fight or flight and the rest and relax side of things. And so if you are breathing in a way that is tipping you towards that fight or flight, that stress side of things, you're gonna have a hard time relaxing, feeling calm and confident, and dealing with anxiety if you're doing that. And so, you know, that's your breathing can affect your stress, your anxiety levels, you know, and you can see this reflected in your heart rate variability. And so these three things, you know, are super important things that all of us need help with. And so, you know, breathing is going to help you with that. The common breathing dysfunctions, you're over breathing. Again, the CO2, man, this is the thing that, like, you know, I hammer this point so much, but it was one of these things, again, like, why don't more people know about this stuff? Why is this information not more common knowledge? And that is the effect that CO2 has in your body. And we think of this as a waste gas, right? Like it's a waste product from processing oxygen. And so you really just need to get it out, right? That's all and the more of it you're getting out, the better. But unfortunately, that's not the case, right? So CO2 does two big important things for us as far as we're concerned as mountain bikers. The first one is that it triggers that breathless, like, holy crap, I can't catch my breath feeling. And, you know, that is the worst feeling in mountain biking, right? So there's a big difference between running out of gas and you know, having that your CO2 levels, having poor CO2 tolerance is basically what that is. If you're triggering that feeling without much effort, you're triggering it a bunch during your rides, you probably have poor CO2 tolerance. And so there's a difference between running out of gas and having poor CO2 tolerance. And your standard cardio training programs do not address the CO2 tolerance side of things. And so you have to do specific training in order to improve that. And the other thing that CO2 does is it unlocks oxygen from red blood cells. It's the Bohr effect is the name for that phenomenon there, whatever you want to call it. But unlocking red oxygen from red blood cells is important for getting that oxygen to working muscles. And so you can have 100% oxygen saturation, but if you don't have enough CO2 to offload that oxygen, then you're not going to be able to utilize it in the working muscles. And so having a higher CO2 tolerance is going to help you in two ways. One, you're going to be able to push harder and longer before you trigger that holy crap, I can't catch my breath, I have to slow down feeling. And because you're able to tolerate higher levels of CO2 before triggering that, you're going to be more easily able to offload oxygen and get it to working muscles. And so your CO2 plays a big role in your performance on the bike, and understanding how it does that and how we can manipulate that to our advantage is this completely just untapped side of cardio training that I don't really understand. Like there's science behind this stuff. This isn't like voodoo black magic that is like really fringe stuff. Like this is, solid science behind this. Patrick McKeown believes that a lot of it, the reason this isn't more popular is because this is being used at the highest levels of sport, but people don't want to talk about it because they're like, this is really effective. And why would I talk about what I'm doing and give my opponents, any idea about what I'm doing that they may start doing that may, take away my advantage. And so I believe there may be something to that because there's definitely evidence that these types of, like breath hold, cardio, and other things like that are being used. But again, like the manipulation of CO2 is this just completely untapped area for us as riders that you're just, again, I don't know why this isn't more popular, but one of the reasons that over breathing is so bad for us is because we're blowing off more CO2 than we need to. And so if you're at rest or at work or whatever, you're blowing off more CO2 than you need to, then you're artificially lowering those CO2 levels. And so your body's going to get used to whatever you do to it, right? And so if you have low CO2 levels, that's what your body is going to get used to. And so that's why, there's times when you do want to overbreathe, I'll touch on that. Like hyperventilation on purpose has a very valuable benefit for us and things we can do with that. But hyperventilation, where you're breathing more than you need to all the time and doing it unconsciously, is bad for us and has a bunch of negative health effects and also impacts our ability to tolerate CO2. And so over breathing is a very common breathing dysfunction. Vertical breathing, again, we'll go over some of these things in the assessment, but vertical breathing is where your chest, if you were to put your hand on your chest, you would see your hand like rising up as you breathe, right? So vertical breathing is chest breathing, and chest breathing is stress breathing. And chest breathing is going to make it harder for you to, control stress and anxiety and stuff like that. And so, chest breathing is also just less efficient way to breathe. You're not using the proper breathing muscles. You also have reverse breathing. And this was something I actually had. It was crazy. I thought I was, no one's ever accused me of having bad cardio. And to find out that I actually tested out, like when we get into the assessments, I'll share more about what I tested out at, but it wasn't great. Right. So, but reverse breathing was something that was wrong with me. And that's where, when you breathe in, your belly should expand out. Right. So as you breathe in, your belly goes out. And as you breathe out, your belly comes in. And reverse breathing is the opposite of that. So when I breathe in, my belly would actually come in. And as I breathe out, my belly would go out. And so this is the reverse of what we're supposed to be doing, which means that I wasn't using my diaphragm to breathe, and definitely not, doing myself any favors with how I was breathing. And then finally, sleep apnea, is the last of the big common breathing dysfunctions. And this is where you stop breathing at night while you're sleeping. And again, breath holding on purpose can have benefit. Breath holding subconsciously when you're sleeping, no good, right? But it's not healthy for you. And so it's going to disturb your sleep. It has negative, health impacts itself. And then that is the, snoring, I guess, really is kind of the precursor to sleep apnea. And snoring itself has negative effects on sleep and stuff. And so you want, both yours and your partner's, right? So being able to, take care of that or keep that under control will help as well. So these are the 4 common dysfunctions that, again, they've done studies on this, and very, very, very few people have no dysfunctions at all when they test them, right? So it's very common that people have at least, one or more of these things here. And so so when it comes to better breathing, right, there's 3 elements that we really want to emphasize. One is nasal breathing. And again, nasal breathing is, we are made to breathe through our nose and eat and talk through our mouth, and only use the mouth in really like high level exertion type efforts, right? And so using your mouth to breathe all the time is really bad. It's very unhealthy. There's a book James Nestor wrote called Breathe, I think, or Breath. I forget which one, if it's got the E on the end or not. But that one's a great book that takes a look at what industrialized food did to our facial structure. and how our facial structures actually changed over the last, 100+ years because of how we're eating softer foods. And there's just, all sorts of things going on. Like I said, like the book does a great job of exploring this, but the evidence is pretty clear that we are made to breathe through our nose, and the nose, the air that goes in through the nose, right? You're getting nitrous oxide, which is a vasodilator. It's humidifying the air and it's cleaning the air. So it's a much different breath that hits your lungs than going in through the mouth. Nasal breathing is also a way to help fight overbreathing. It's because of the resistance that there is through the nose. It's a natural, it slows down your breathing. And so it's harder to overbreathe if you're nasal breathing. It's not impossible, but it's harder to do that. It's also easier to use your diaphragm. For whatever reason, nasal breathing tends to trigger the diaphragm easier than breathing through the mouth. And again, once you know how to use your diaphragm, you can certainly use your diaphragm during mouth breathing as well. But when you're trying to reestablish that connection with the diaphragm and using it, then it's, the nasal breathing goes a long way towards helping you do that. The other thing I just mentioned, right, breathing with the diaphragm, I've talked several times already about how important it is to use the right muscles to breathe and not the, other muscles. And so the diaphragm it's a big dome shaped muscle under the lungs, right? So it's shaped like a dome. When you breathe in, it flattens out. That's why it pushes all the viscera down and the belly expands out. And then as you breathe out, it collapses back into a dome shape, which is what pushes the air out. And again, that's why the viscera in the belly comes back in. And so that it should be your main muscle that's driving your breathing. And so you want to make sure that you're using that diaphragm to drive your breathing. And then finally, the third thing is to match your breathing to your effort level. And a lot of this goes towards don't overbreathe, right? So if you're overbreathing and you're chronically overbreathing, it's going to cause problems. It's just an inefficient way to breathe at rest or while you're performing or whatever. So make sure that you're, trying to match that effort level to your breathing. So these three things are what go into, better breathing, at least in my research and stuff. And so that's kind of what I've emphasized in the program. And so, again, you've got your, your daily practices, and then you have your workout practices. And these two things make up the whole that makes up the program. So getting into the assessments here. So like I said, I'm gonna run you guys through the assessments real quick, right? This doesn't take too long. And so the first one is breaths taken in a minute. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set a timer here, just be a little awkward silence while I stare at the screen here. See if I can think of anything, smart to say while we're doing this. But I'm gonna, hit the start button. So you guys, relaxed position. Should, preferably nose breathing. I guess you can breathe however you're comfortable, but since we're trying to work on nose breathing, and then you're just going to count how many breaths do I take in a minute. And so whenever you guys are ready, everybody looks ready to me. Here we go. So go ahead and start. So again, just nice, relaxed breathing. And you're just counting how many breaths do you take. And so for brevity's sake, we'll do 30 seconds and have you guys multiply by 2, because that's how that works. But again, if you can just, do it for a minute, gives you a little more accurate, but it'll be pretty close. So we're coming up on the 30 seconds and stop. All right. So that was 30 seconds. If anybody's brave enough to throw in what their breath count was in the chat there, so we can see that'd be cool. But if not, don't worry. If you're just sitting there watching me going, laughing at me while I was doing that, that's fine too. So breaths taken in a minute is what we're looking at is, are you over breathing at rest? Okay. And if you're over breathing at rest, then odds of you over breathing at work are, pretty high. Okay. And so depending what over breathing is at rest really depends on who you talk to. I would say that most people are going to agree that at least 10 breaths per minute. Anything over 10 breaths per minute is definitely over breathing. And so some, like I said, like optimal is around 5 breaths per minute. And again, this is just, again, in my research, depending upon who I talk to or, heard talking about this, but somewhere between that 5 and 10 breaths per minute mark at rest is what you're shooting for. And so if you're breathing more than that, and I forget exactly what it was, but I think it was like 15 or 16 breaths per minute. Again, I was pretty surprised that I was over breathing that badly. But it just, again, you're over breathing, right? And so you're blowing off more CO2 than you need to, which means that you're chronically lowering those levels, which means that, all day long, you're creating this lowered CO2 tolerance that when you get on your bike and you go out and ride is biting you in the ass. So, again, this is why the daily practices are so important, because what you're doing right now is having an effect on your ride later. Okay. And so understanding how your breathing impacts that is important. All right. So the next one is your BOLT score. This is the body oxygen level test. And so it's taking a look at your CO2 tolerance. And so for this one, what we're going to do is, again, just, at comfortable position, sitting down, you're going to take a normal breath in and out through your nose. And this is where I explain that a normal breath is just, out is just a relaxed exhale, right? And so I'm not looking to try like push all the air that I can out of my lungs. So just normal breath in, out, and you're going to hold, right? And so if you've got to put a number on it, it's going to be 80%, something like that, right? So, and then I'm going to say normal breath in, normal breath out, and hold. Then I'm going to start the stopwatch here, and we're going to go for 40 or 30 seconds again. And so I'll count out as it's going, like 5, 10, 15. So, where you reach the point where you feel like I need to breathe, right? So this isn't a maximum breath hold. So, you're not trying to push it. You're just like, when you start to feel that, like, oh, I need to breathe feeling, then go ahead and start breathing. If you start having a pant and gasp for air, you definitely pushed it too far. That's not the point. But so you're just looking for, like, normal breath in, normal breath out, hold until you feel, it could be like some tightness in your chest or neck. It could be like, a little voice in your head, right? Kind of how that thing starts to signal you can be different for different people, but you'll know it, right? Everybody knows that feeling when it starts to come on. And so you'll just start, normal nose breathing. When you're done with that, make note of where we were at in the count, and we'll go from there. So everybody ready? Here we go. Normal breath in, normal breath out, and hold. That's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30. All right. So, and again, if you're doing this yourself and you were at 30 and still could go, then like keep going, right? And so again, looking at the assessment, you can see that anything under 25 seconds is suboptimal. I got a 17 seconds. Maybe that's where I got the 17 from. I think my breathing was probably a little lower than 17. I think I was like at 12 or 13, if I remember correctly. But I remember my BOLT score was 17 seconds. I was freaking shocked. I was like, holy crap. But it made sense, right? Because, like, man, there's been moments like I thought I was gonna die. Like it's not coming back, right? My heart rate's not gonna come back. I'm not gonna be able to catch my breath. This is it, right? Like I've triggered some really bad, like almost panic attacks on the trail from pushing myself really hard, right? Hard technical climb, especially at altitude. And man, it can get really, really interesting mentally. And so it started to make sense. Like, wow, okay, like I don't want to, I say like I'm mentally tough. Like I don't mean that like, oh, I'm this, super tough guy. Like I definitely am not the toughest guy in the world. I'm not a Navy SEAL or anything like that. But, I just kind of trained myself to like tough my way through these things, which you need to, right? There's kind of that's one of the things that you do, but you also want to try to improve it. And so you're not triggering it as badly and as much. And so, you're looking for anything from like 25 to 40 seconds. 40 seconds plus is, I guess optimal, or, but that's, so really as riders, you're looking for at least like 25 to 30 seconds. And that, that's your goal. And then, so again, this tells us your CO2 tolerance, which we've talked about before, like why that's important. And then finally, your hands-on assessment. Now, this is going to take a look at your biomechanical side of breathing. Like, how are you breathing? How are you driving your breathing? So we've taken a look at, are you over breathing? We've taken a look at, like your breathing efficiency. We've taken a look at your bolts or your CO2 tolerance and, kind of your chemical side. And now we're taking a look at the biomechanical side here. And so the first one is the high-low test. And so I'll kind of manipulate the camera a little bit here so you guys can see me as I do this. And so what we would do is you're going to put your hand on your, one on your belly, right? So just a little bit above your belly button. And then you're going to put your other hand on your chest. And then now you're just going to breathe normally, normal breaths in and out through your nose. And so what we're looking for is two things. One, do I feel my hand expand out as I breathe in, and then collapse back in as I exhale? And then also, do I feel movement with my hand on my chest? So as I breathe, do I see my hand moving up and down, and so, feeling my hand expand out, like, so if it's like moving like this, that's not bad, right? It's moving up and down, right? And so the vertical breathing is what we're trying to avoid. And so the way that I score this, a 3-point scale, right? One is like, what the hell are you talking about, James? I can't, down here, it's like, I can't make my belly move. Or it's moving in, right? You got reverse breathing. It's doing it backwards, right? Like that would be a 1. 2 would be like, if I really think about it, I can make it work, but it's kind of tough. And 3 is like, oh yeah, no problem. I got that. It's like, no worries. With the chest, same thing. If your hand's moving up and down, then, and you can't stop it, that's a 1, right? If it's moving up and down and you can focus on it and make it stop, that's a 2. And if you're breathing and your hand never moved up and down, that's a 3, right? And so you're grading yourself a simple 3-point scale, see where you're at. And so if you're getting a 1 or a 2, right, then you have work to do. You can improve there. And so the next one is the Superman. And so this is where we take a C grip, right, and we put our hands on our bottom floating ribs. And then as we breathe in, I want to feel those my hands push out. And then as I breathe out, they collapse in. So this looks at, do we have 360 degrees of breathing? You can take this a level further and put your hands around on your lower back as well. And then same thing, as you breathe in, you should feel pressure like pushing out and kind of pushing the hands apart a little bit. And then as you breathe in, they collapse back in. You want to be breathing with the whole diaphragm. And so if the whole diaphragm is expanding down, then you should be getting 360 degrees of pressure pushing out. And so that's why you should feel not just the belly, but also the sides and the low back all pushing out as you're breathing. And this is one of the reasons I don't like the term belly breathing. Like, I may use it just because it's like, something that people understand, but I will almost always follow that up by explaining, like, I don't actually mean to breathe with your belly. Like, I really hate that term, to be honest with you, because it gets people focused on the wrong thing, right? Like, I'm not breathing with my belly. Like, I've actually, like, if you're able to, if your belly is moving in and out while you're breathing, but you're not getting anything on the sides or anything in the lower back, then you're more than likely, you're not driving your breathing with your diaphragm. You're driving your breathing with your abs. I've run into several people who have taught themselves how to do that. Like, they're literally using their belly to drive their breathing. You don't want that to be happening. You want the belly expansion to be a product of good breathing. So that's why, like, I talk about feeling pressure, right? Pressure pushes my hand out. It's not my ab muscles pushing my hand out. It's the pressure from the viscera pushing down that pushes my hands out. And so again, if you're getting that full 360 degrees, then you're going to be getting it pushing out all the way around. And so again, a lot of people will find that they have trouble using the full diaphragm, again, a full 360 degree breathing. Or another thing that they'll find is that, like with the Superman, like maybe they've got one side that works well, like they're able to push and, get that side coming out, but the other side doesn't work as well. And so, things are off. And so there's room to improve with that. And again, same 3-point scale, like 1, you can't get it to do it at all. 2, I can get it to go do it if I really focus on it. And 3 is I was doing that already, right? And so that's what you're naturally doing. And so we want to get to where we're 3 on all of these, right? Like we want to get to where our natural breathing pattern uses the belly, doesn't use the chest, and shows that 360 degree, not use your belly, but like, feel the belly expanding, and then, feeling that 360 degree expansion from the, from your breathing as well, without having to think about it. That's our goal. That should be where you get to. So those are the assessments, and also covered, what the assessments mean with that. One of the studies that I'd come across looked at, I think actually Patrick McCown shared it with us, but anyways, they looked at, compared functional breathing, like looked at scored people's breathing, and then looked at the functional movement screen. And so what they found was that, and what was it? I got it written here, like, 87.5% of participants who passed the functional movement screen were diaphragmatic breathers. I think it was like 1 out of 8 people who passed the functional movement screen were not diaphragmatic breathers. And so again, it shows, like, man, human beings are wonderfully adaptive, almost to our detriment, right? Like you can figure out how to work around all sorts of dysfunctions. It doesn't mean that it's optimal, right? So that shows, like, can you pass the functional movement screen with dysfunctional breathing? Yeah, you can. It's just really, really hard, right? So it's much easier if you fix your breathing, and then you're going to have an easier time moving better. At least that's what kind of the correlation suggests, is that if you're a diaphragmatic breather, is going to have an easier time passing the functional movement screen. And so, anyway, so those are, just some of the benefits and stuff that you get from the program. All right, so this gets into our breathing drill. So now we have an assessment, right? So now you have an idea of, how do you breathe? Do you overbreathe? Do you have bad CO2 tolerance? Do you have some biomechanical breathing dysfunctions going on? Or do you have all 3 things going on? Like I said, like I had all 3, right? Like it was a little embarrassing. I'm supposed to be this, like, pinnacle of fitness for, people to emulate, right? Like, hey man, James, Bike James is in shape, and so I'm gonna try and be like him. And I'm like, no, don't be like me. I breathe like shit, right? I need to fix this stuff. Like, so, but yeah, like I said, like over breathing, poor bolt score, and I had reverse breathing, where I was breathing in, my belly was actually reversed, and I had vertical breathing, right? Those 2 things kind of go together. Like as I breathed in, my chest would go up, and my belly would come in, and it was way more pronounced at effort, right? Like I could breathe actually pretty reasonably well at rest. But man, that once I started like working hard, and this is why it's actually important to kind of test these things at different, states, like check it lying down, check it sitting, check it while you're walking, check it while, doing a high-low test is not that hard to do while you're walking. Superman test, do it on a stationary bike or something. So you can, because your breathing can change, right? Like you can have functional breathing in one context and have dysfunctional breathing in another context. And so, you want to make sure that you're checking that stuff in these different contexts. But like I said, like for me, I was bad on all 3. Okay. So, where do we go from there? So we're going to start with some breathing drills. And so the breathing drills are, just kind of that foundational level, right? And so what the breathing drills are supposed to do is 2 things. One, just you have nothing else going on, right? All you're doing is breathing. So it means all you have to do is focus on your breathing. And so it also helps, as it's kind of like a, helps with focus. It's kind of a form of meditation, right? So there's a lot of benefits that come from this besides the physical benefits, but the physical benefits are coming from you being able to really focus on your breathing. So you're able to breathe properly, right? And so at first, if you need to put your hands in the high-low position and feel that hand pushing out, right, with the belly, or in the Superman position, right? Like, use those things as feedback for yourself to know, am I breathing properly? Like, don't do your breathing drills and use dysfunctional breathing. Like, all you have to do is focus on how you're breathing. So it gives you a chance to really focus on your biomechanics of how you're breathing. And then they also slow your breathing down. So especially if you're over breathing, all the breathing drills are going to have you breathing less than you normally do. And so just by virtue of you breathing less than you normally do, you're going to be working on the over breathing side, like, bringing your breath rate down. And you're also going to be building a slight or have a slight rise in CO2, right? If you're not breathing as much, you're not going to be able to blow off as much CO2. And so you'll have a rise in CO2 from these breathing drills as well. So it's going to help us, biomechanically and biochemically from that aspect there. So I have these, again, there's all sorts of breathing drills, right? This is definitely not, I mean, I've got I think it's like 5 pages long of all the drills and all the different things and stuff, techniques and tactics. And, I finally had to sit down, like, after I did all these courses and studied and did all this stuff, I had to had just notes everywhere. And I had to pull all these drills together. So, these are common drills that everybody uses. And here's kind of a unique one that this person uses, and put them all together and compile them. And so, I've got lists of drills. But what I did is looked at, okay, where's the best place to start? What's kind of those big rocks, right? What are those foundational things you want to start with? And so, so I have these mapped out in a 5, I guess, step progression. And so the first one is the breathe light drill. And this is where you are just focused on your breathing. And so the breathe light drill, I have the instructions for that. Like I said, we'll go over that here in just a second. But you're just focused on the breathing. There's no specific tempo or any, no breath holds, anything like that, right? It's just you breathing and focused on your breathing. And then from that, you start to add a tempo into it. And so all breaths, you have an inhale, there's the time at the top, even if it's 0, right? There's still a time at the top, and then you've got your exhale, and then again, time at the bottom. And so there's 4 parts to every breath. And so you can manipulate those 4 parts to have different types of breathing, which can have different effects on the body. And so the 4-6 breathing is breathing into a count of 4 and out to a count of 6. So it's just like, if 4060, if you're doing the 4 number designation for it, but just 4-6 breathing is what I have here. And so again, I've got the tempo there, it's 4060. And so that one, you're going to have a specific tempo that you're focusing on. Now the idea is that the breathe light, because you don't have anything else to focus on, it's just going to allow you to really focus on the biomechanics, just feeling the breathing coming in through the nose, feel how it goes, into the lungs, just focusing on feeling the diaphragm, and just, that's it. That's all you have to focus on. Now, once you've done that and it starts to become a little bit more of a habit and it's easier for you to do that, well, now we can add in the tempo. Whereas if we threw the tempo in first, you may be so focused on trying to follow the tempo that you may lose the biomechanical side of it. And so, so again, that's kind of the thought process behind the progression is start with just the breathing, then add in the cadence, a simple 4-6 cadence. And then we're going to start to throw in some breath holds. Now, this is what I want to say, and I'll address this here at the end as well. But if you have high blood pressure, you want to avoid the breath holds. So any of the drills or anything in here that has a breath hold in it, you don't want to do. Okay. Now you can do the breathe light. You can do the 4-6 breathing. You can do all, a bunch of the other stuff out of the program here. So I got something in my eye. But you don't want to be doing the breath holds. And so, but anyway, so the triangle of breathing is going to start implementing a breath hold. Now, the triangle breathing one, you're holding at the top. So you would breathe into a count of 4, pause for a count of 4, and then breathe out to a count of 4, and then into 4, pause for 4, out to 4. And so that's the first level of it. You can make that harder by adding a second to each part, right? You want to keep it symmetrical, right? So we want to have, if you're going to go to 5 seconds, it should be 5 inhale, 5 hold, 5 exhale. The other thing that you can do to make it a little bit harder is to go to the triangle breathing 2, which is now we're going to do our hold on the exhale, which is harder than doing it on the inhale. You're going to build CO2 much faster that way. And so this would be 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out, and then pause for 4 seconds. So 4 in, 4 out, pause for 4 seconds on the exhale. And so that's your triangle breathing 2. And then finally you have your box breathing. And now we're holding at the top and the bottom. So we're holding at each part, right? So all 4 sections of the breath have a tempo to it. And so again, you breathe into 4, hold at the top to 4, out to 4, hold to 4, right? Just repeat that pattern. And as you can imagine, the box breathing, because you have the 2 holds, is going to build CO2 up the fastest. And so this is why it's good to progress through these things. And it's not an idea of like, I got to get to box breathing. Box breathing is the most important one. I'm giving you tools to use. And I use breathe light a lot. I use 4-6 breathing. I use all of these, right? So it's not like I just got to box breathing. I'm like, that's it. I'm only doing box breathing from now on because it's the hardest one. But box breathing is one of the harder ones. And so, especially if you have a low Bolt score, you trying to jump into box breathing where, if you add it up, right, it's 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds exhale, and 4 seconds hold again. That is 12 seconds before your next inhale. So you're inhaling, and then it's 12 seconds before you get to inhale again. That is a long time if you've got bad CO2 tolerance, and that can really be tough. And so if you follow this progression, then you're going to be able to systematically improve that CO2 tolerance. And so when you get to the box breathing, it's going to be challenging, but not super hard. And so it's also something else to keep in mind with this stuff, like, because you are messing around with that, that panicky, I can't catch my breath feeling. You don't want to take this stuff to the point that you trigger a panic attack. All right. Like, again, it's not common, but you don't need to be taking this to the point where you're like, holy crap, starting to have like really super panicky thoughts about this. So like, doing the box breathing and really struggling through it is not going to be as beneficial for you as doing the triangle breathing or even the breathe light and it being challenging, right? But not like this super hard struggle. So that's so those are the breathing drills. And you can see I got a suggestion on how long to spend on each one, but everybody's different, right? So you may find that you're able to progress through these things faster than some other people, or you may find that you need to spend more time on it. It doesn't matter, right? Everybody's got their own journey. So just go with what's going to work good for you. So kind of talking about the breathing drills specifically here. So the breathe light instructions. So I have this here. I also have a video that takes you through this. But for the breathe light, it's very simple, right? Like you want to be in a relaxed position, so either sitting or laying down or somewhere that you can relax. If you're going to lay down on the floor, I strongly suggest like pulling your feet up into your the bottom of like a bridge position, right? So instead of having your legs out straight, pull your heels in towards your butt, with your bent legs, like you're at the bottom of like a glute bridge position. And especially if you have tight hip flexors, that'll really help keep your pelvic floor in a good position. So again, if you're really super flexible and don't have any problem with that, then feel free to have your legs straight. But like I said, I suggest having them bent if you're going to lay down. But you get in a comfortable position, right, sitting or laying down, and then you're just going to start to focus on your breathing. And what you want is your breathing to be quiet, right? So you should not be able to hear yourself breathing. And, people don't really think about that until they start to listen and they're like, man, I sound like I'm just huffing and puffing all the time, right? So it should be quiet. You should not be able to hear your breathing. Your breath should be soft, right? And so the visual that I like to use is that I've got like a feather or something under my nose, and for some reason it doesn't tickle. But as I'm breathing, I'm trying to disturb that feather as little as possible, or not at all, right? Like I want to breathe out so softly and so so softly that I wouldn't disturb a feather, right? And so that's pretty soft. So quiet and soft. And then as you inhale, you want your breath to be deep. Now, this is where it's important for to explain that when people say, well, people, right? At least people in the breathwork industry, when they talk about taking a deep breath, they're generally not talking about taking as big a breath as you can, like is taking in as much air as you possibly can into your lungs. That's not what they mean by taking a deep breath. What they mean by taking a deep breath is to draw the air into the bottom of the lungs. If you're using the diaphragm, you're going to pull the air into the bottom first, and then the air will fill up from there. And so breathing deep is about using the diaphragm. And so this comes back into that biomechanical thing. So if you are, having to put your hand on your belly or your sides to make sure you're using your diaphragm, then do that, because you want to make sure that your inhales are being driven from the diaphragm and they're, deep breaths that way. And then as you exhale, you want to feel a total body feeling of relaxation, right? So as you exhale, you're just, right? It should feel relaxing to exhale. So you're just sitting there, right? Breathing in and out through the nose. All the breathing drills should be done through the nose. And so you're, breathing through the nose. And I like to, I'm focusing on my biomechanics and also just paying attention to the breath, just going in and out through the nose, right? Just feeling like, what does it feel like for air to come in, goes in through the nose, and then it hits the back of the throat. Then it travels down, and feel it like kind of get into, filling the bottom of the lungs, right? So there's a feeling to air entering your body that most of us have never like sat and just like spent time with, right? It's an interesting sensation when you do. And so just focusing on the biomechanics, how does it feel, right? And so again, it can put you into like this meditative state as you're doing it. So that is, how you would perform your breathe light, and, just set your timer. And there's a book, I got my bookshelf here somewhere, that I read. What the fuck is the name of it? Sorry for dropping the F-bomb. I think Peak Mind is the name of it. And they, in it, the lady who wrote it, again, there's a ton of research on this stuff. They're using this stuff with special forces, like people that got to operate at high levels under high stress, right? Like they're finding that breathing and specific breathing drills and tactics just play a giant role in being able to help them do that. And so it's a really good book, but they did the research. And again, using, I believe the research was conducted by the armed forces, by the Army. And they found that 12 minutes a day was the minimum amount of time, right? So if you do at least 12 minutes of your breathing drills a day, at least like 5 days a week, but preferably daily, you're going to see benefits. Now, would you see more benefits if you did like 20 to 30 minutes? Probably, right? But 12 minutes is that minimum to see results. But having said that, don't let that number keep you from doing anything. If all you can do is 5 minutes, do 5 minutes. Just do what you can. I don't care if you can do a minute. Just do what you can. Start there, and you will, you'll find the time as you progress, right? So as you're doing it, you start to see the benefits. You start to go like, man, I actually feel better. Like my, head's clear. I feel like I got a little more energy. I'm calmer when I'm done with my breathe light session. And so you're a little more motivated. It's like, well, man, next time I'm going to go for, 10 minutes instead of 5, because, and then you're at the 12, and then you're at the 15 mark or whatever. Right. So, but I would say like, that 12 to 15 is, minimal to see the results, but just do what you can. Okay. So that is the, the breathe light. And so again, there's really not a whole lot to it. It's just that, right? So, but once we go to the other drills, the 4-6 breathing and the triangle breathing, this is where in the manual, I have a suggestion for an app. again, I have an Android. Think of me what you will, either a free thinker or a dumbass. I don't know. But I have this app here, where is it here? Paced Breathing Pro or Paced Breathing. They have a free version, which is Paced Breathing. And then they have a paid version, which is Paced Breathing Pro. And it just gets rid of the ads and, lets you use, instead of like, I think you can program like 2 or 3 preset breathing patterns with the regular one. And you get, infinite number with the Pro. And so that's a good one that I found for the Android phones. You get that on the Google Store. And then for the, what was it, for the iPhone, right? For Apple devices, it was the iBreathe, I believe was the name of it. And so, yeah, there it is right there. Yeah, iBreathe app was one that my buddy suggested, said was good. And I saw some good reviews on that. But what these apps are going to do is they're going to allow you to program in your breathing, right? And so like I can program the inhale, the exhale, the pauses, and then it's going to just make a sound. I just follow along to that sound. So for example, I've got this one here. I've got triangle breathing 1, right? So this is 4 seconds in, hold, and then 4 seconds out, and then repeat, right? And so I'll, play this so you can kind of hear how it works. But, this would be your triangle breathing pattern, right? So starting, that would be inhale, hold, exhale, right back into the inhale, and hold, and then exhale, and then right back in. So again, you can see just sitting here following along to that. Yeah, so there you go. Again, it's that's the, like I said, triangle breathing there. And so in here, I've got my different, 4-6 breathing, triangle breathing, box breathing are all pre-programmed in here. So it's easy for me to just pick what I want to do, pick how long I have and hit that and go. And so you can use your, excuse me, I lost my train of thought there. Oh, this, or you can just count it off in your head, right? So you don't have to have a timer app. It just makes it, convenient and a little easier, but you can certainly sit there and just like count, like, in 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4, out 2, right? Like, so counting it in your mind. Now doing that makes it a little tougher to just kind of relax and focus on how you're breathing and some of these other things. So, like I said, I like the app and recommend it. I have a question here about how many cycles of the 4-6 breathing to do at a time. And so again, it kind of goes back to my, thing about like 12 minutes is kind of that minimum number. So, 4-6, you're doing 10 seconds. So that's 6 breaths per minute. And so, for 10 minutes would be 60 breaths. So 72 breaths, right? So 72 cycles would be 12 minutes of breathing with that. And so, but do what you can, right? Like I'll have, if I've got, whatever, I've got 5 minutes before I've got a webinar or something and I'm feeling just a little anxious, I need to calm down, I'll do the 4-6 breathing or the breathe light for just like, 3 to 5 minutes. And it will have an effect. It definitely has an effect, just even that short amount of time. So, but like I said, like 12 to 15 minutes. And, you can go longer if you want. I mean, having like 30 minutes to sit there and just kind of meditate and breathe, it never hurt anyone. Okay. So, so anyways, yeah. So good question. If anybody's got any other questions on the breathing drills, please let me know. So that does it for kind of our first aspect, which is the breathing drills. And then the next section that we have here is the mouth taping. And so this is where I'm going to have to run off for a second and grab my tape because, I forgot, remembered everything else, but I forgot the tape. So give me 1 second. Don't go anywhere. I wish I had something to keep you guys entertained in the meantime, but I will be right back. Jacks. My dog's wondering why I'm running through the house. So anyway, so tape, mouth taping. Again, it's taping your mouth at night does a couple things. One, it's going to prevent you from mouth breathing, which, helps with over breathing, helps with snoring, and just helps reinforce, proper breathing mechanics. We want to be nose breathers. And so if you are trying to nose breathe during the day, and then at night you're sleeping for 6, 7, 8+ hours a night, and you're mouth breathing during that time, then it's going to make it hard for you to make permanent changes. And again, mouth breathing, it disturbs your sleep, right? A lot of people who mouth breathe, they wake up, they need to, during the night, they need to drink water. It also triggers an effect. I forget exactly how the internal chemistry works, but it triggers needing to go pee. So if you're a mouth breather and you find yourself having to get up to go pee several times a night, if you're a dude, it may not be your prostate that's getting out of control. It may just be the effects of mouth breathing. And so, but again, if you're having to get up to get drinks, you're having to get up to go pee, that's disturbing your sleep, then that's going to affect all sorts of other things. Like I said, along with the snoring, which can lead to sleep apnea. So mouth taping is one of these super low hanging fruits that you should be taking advantage of. So there's a bunch of products and stuff out there that you can use for it. I guess I'm not gonna say a bunch, but several, specific like mouth taping tapes. But what I found to work is just regular like Scotch tape or whatever you've got equivalent at your house. I just take a piece and about like yay big, about like the size of a postage stamp or so. And then I put it right here in the middle, boom, like that. So you can see I can still talk. I can still breathe through my mouth if I needed to, but it's just a gentle reminder to my body as I'm sleeping to keep my mouth shut. And so it helps with that. Now, I had a question. Somebody was wondering, well, what happens if you've got a beard or a mustache? And so, as you can see, I got a little scruff going here. Sometimes I'll not shave. Like I tell people, there's a difference between not shaving and growing a beard. And I just don't shave for weeks on end sometimes. So it looks like I'm growing a beard, but I eventually shave. But I will get like pretty scruffy, pretty good bunch of hair going here. And this tape works really well because it will stick to the lips, right? There's just enough skin there for the tape to stick to. And so, again, I'm not going to say that somebody doesn't have like, a burly enough beard and mustache where that can be a problem. And then at that point, I'm not really sure exactly what the answer is. But I think that most people will find that this will still work. This method will still work, even if you have a beard or mustache. But yeah, make sure that you're doing the mouth taping. I resisted it forever. I thought it sounded terrifying, right? Like I was like, dude, why would I want to tape my mouth at night and wake up? I'm like, if my nose is stuffed up. And this is one of those things, right? Like if you don't use your nose, you're going to lose your ability to use your nose. And so when you're mouth breathing a lot, your nose just starts to shut down, right? It literally, like, your ability to breathe through your nose goes away. And so it's always feeling stuffed up. You can't breathe through your nose. And so, the thought of like having a stuffy nose and then mouth taping was like, holy crap, this is terrifying. But this helped because, like I said, you can breathe and talk, and it's not that big of a deal. It's just kind of a gentle reminder. But I can't recommend this enough. I think that, if you're not mouth taping, you're just leaving a bunch of stuff on the table there. Unless you've just confirmed that like you don't mouth breathe at night. I mean, then fine. But most of us do. So make sure that you're doing the mouth taping. again, sleep quality is super important, and like all those other things I mentioned there. So next section is the self-awareness and check-ins. And man, this is just really about being aware, right? And most people, I mentioned, like most people never spent time just feeling what does breathing feel like, right? What does it feel like to have a breath go in and out through my nose? And so we're not really aware of how we're breathing, how we feel because of our breathing, all these things. And so this kind of ties in to the next section too, which is the improving anxiety and stress. And so like having reminders, like one of the areas that you definitely want to check in with yourself is if you're at work or home, whatever, and you are working on the computer, then they call it email apnea. There's actually a name for it, where people will be working on their computer, generally answering emails or whatever, and they'll stop breathing. And then they'll like realize, oh man, I haven't taken a breath in a while. And remember, like holding your breath unconsciously is not healthy for you. And so, just making sure that you're not, doing that you're, using good breathing mechanics. And then the stress and anxiety side comes in because you can, your breathing affects it, right? We've talked about stress breathing. We've talked about how the diaphragm, can impact your HRV, right? Breathing with the diaphragm will help improve HRV, which means that you're tipping things more towards the rest and relax side of things. And so how you are breathing will affect your anxiety and stress levels. And so if you're, chest breathing, panic breathing, you're not using the diaphragm. Another aspect is if you are, you're exhaling faster than you're inhaling. So fast exhales, like, right? Like that's a stress type breathing pattern. What you would like is for your exhale to be as long or longer than your inhale. And so you'll notice that all the like the 4-6 breathing and stuff, right? That's a longer exhale than inhale. Like all the triangle breathing, you've got a much longer exhale, holds and exhales before inhale. So these things impact the message that's going to your brain. Like, am I in a stressful situation? And so if you're chest breathing, you're not using the diaphragm, you're using sharp exhales, like this is reinforcing to your body that like, man, you're in a stressful situation. And so one of the guys that I worked with while I was studying, he described chest breathing as being chased by the world's slowest bear all day long, right? Like the bear is chasing, like, you're chest breathing, your body doesn't know that you're not being chased by a bear. All it knows is that you're employing a breathing pattern that you should only be using during a stressful situation. And so your body's under this like stress from being chased by a bear all day long, because that's how you breathe all the time. Whereas like, if you're running from a bear, when you're done, you should go back to normal breathing so your body can relax. But we're stuck in this, this stress breathing cycle. And so being able to, use your breathing either throughout the day, so you're checking in. And so like, I'm making sure that I'm not, stress breathing. So maybe I can head some of the stuff off at the pass. Or if you notice like, man, I'm starting to feel stressed, check your breathing. What's going on? Are you, breathing in the chest? Are you, sharp exhales? Can you, get breathing in the diaphragm, slow things down? These things have a big impact on your ability to relax. And so, again, they all kind of tie into the just being aware of yourself and how you're feeling. And then how does that tie into your breathing? And so we've got some stuff on competition, which I'll get into as we get, when we get into the performance focus section, which is next here. But as far as like the stress and anxiety stuff like that, that's really, about it. Like having a breathing pattern that works well for you. So as you go through, like for me, like the breathe light is great, right? Like sometimes I'll use the 4-6 breathing or the triangle breathing, but man, if I'm feeling stressed, like, man, I just need to fucking chill out. I just need to relax. Like I just do the breathe light. I don't want to worry about counting my tempo or anything like that. Like I said, sometimes I'll do the 4-6 breathing, but I'll just, use the breathe light and just focus on that. Like really like, man, on the exhale, just relax. Inhale. All right. So I'm breathing a little loud so you guys can hear me. I wouldn't want to be breathing so anybody can hear me when I'm doing my breathe light. But the point is that, just finding a breathing drill that works well for you in those situations can go a long way, because now you have a tool that you can use to help, get things on a better pathway. And so again, I'm not saying that breathing is 100% behind anxiety and stress, and but it definitely plays a role, right? And so the stress breathing can start to trigger anxiety and stress. And if you are feeling anxiety and stress and you are stress breathing, you're gonna have a really tough time getting out of that mental state while you're still stress breathing. You're going to have to shift your breathing into more of a rest and relax style breathing for you to really be able to start making inroads on changing your mental state. Because remember, your internal chemistry affects your consciousness, right? And so if you're breathing in a way that's creating stress hormones and you're trying to relax, you're fighting yourself, right? And so if you can breathe in a way that helps alleviate stress, then you're going to have a much easier time attaining that mental state or maintaining it, right? And so anyway, so that's one of the things that I found myself that breathing has done for me, has helped a ton with anxiety and stress. Like I mentioned, like if I've got a webinar or something like this one, I actually did before I did this one, I did the Wim Hof style, the super ventilation breathing, because I was feeling a little run down from my workout and run that I went on earlier today. And so I was like, man, I need to pick myself up. And so I used the super ventilation, which we'll talk about here in a second. But man, a lot of times I'll use one of these breathing drills to help calm myself down before doing something like this, because it just helps me perform better if I'm able to go into it in a more confident, less stressed state of mind. And so anyways, hopefully that is helpful for you. That covers the foundational lifestyle. But again, the mouth taping, being conscious of nose breathing as much as you can throughout the day, and then being conscious of using your breathing to maintain a solid, calm mental state. Or if you feel yourself getting off the rails, being able to use your breathing to get you back on track, or as part of your strategy to help get you back on track. These are kind of those foundational things that you're gonna be able to build that higher performance stuff on top of. So getting into the high performance stuff. So using your breathing on the trail. Now, one thing is doing this stuff, if you're doing the breathing drills and you're doing the workouts that we'll get into here in a second, like you can just go out and ride. You're not gonna have to think about anything, and you're going to see improvements. Like that's the great thing, because if you're making better breathing your habit, when you get on the bike, that's just going to be how you breathe, right? And as you're doing these drills, you're going to improve your CO2 tolerance. You're going to improve your red blood cell count. You're going to improve how you're moving. You're going to improve the strength of your respiratory muscles. All of these things are going to come together to where you're able to push harder and longer than you could before. And so, but there are some things that you can do, kind of more consciously to help with this as well. And so one is to monitor your effort level. And so the breathing gears is the concept. We've got a workout in here, the breathing gear intervals. And so basically the idea is that you've got 3 different levels, 3 different gears, right? So you've got easy, which is should be nose only breathing, in through the nose, out through the nose. And your inhale and exhale should be even, or your exhale should be slightly longer, right? So we were talking about that earlier, how longer exhale is actually kind of more of a rest and relax. So if this is an easy effort, then your breathing pattern should match that. If this is a moderate effort, right, like moderately hard effort, then now we're going to shift up to a nose mouth pattern, in through the nose, out through the mouth, and something a little faster, like into 2 and out to 1. Right? Like that. And then finally, you've got 3rd gear, which is that hardest all out effort level. This time, you can use nose mouth breathing if you want. Some people have trained themselves to do that, but this is where you can shift to that mouth breathing, in through the mouth, right? And so full inhales, full exhales. Want to make sure you're not just, shallow chest breaths. We're not talking about the hyperventilation like that. But so that's your third gear. Now, again, we'll talk about a workout you can use with that concept. But one of the things that you want to do is be conscious of, does my breathing match my effort? So if you're cruising along and this is supposed to be like, man, this is easy part, and you're huffing and puffing in third gear, right? Things are off. You're not being very efficient with your breathing. And so you're going to, want to downshift your breathing if you notice yourself doing that. But just having check-ins to make sure, like, does my breathing match my effort level? And then the other way that you can use your breathing, more purposefully on the trail is to overbreathe, to actually start to hyperventilate in anticipation of a hard effort. Now, again, a good example of this is a climb, right? So you see a climb coming up, and instead of, going up it and trying to maintain normal breathing, and then when you're finally forced to start breathing harder, then you start breathing harder, you're going to be better off if you start breathing harder at the bottom. So say you're cruising along in second gear and you see the hill coming up, the climb, and you're like, that you're going to have to shift into third gear on that climb, shift into third gear at the bottom. All right. So start breathing harder there. And so what this is going to do is it's going to blow off CO2. And so again, remember, your CO2 levels as they rise is going to trigger that panicky, I can't catch my breath feeling. So if right before a really hard effort, you blow off CO2, it's going to allow you to work that much harder and longer before you trigger that effort. So again, hyperventilating on purpose in very specific contexts, it can be helpful, right? It's the same thing that deep sea divers do. They'll hyperventilate before they dive because lowering the CO2 levels allow them to hold their breath much, much longer than if they didn't do that. And so, CO2 scrubbing is what they call it. But you're basically doing kind of a version of that with your riding. And so, you got a sprint. Again, if you're able to anticipate the effort, right? Or you get into the effort and you realize, like, oh crap, I need to shift up ahead of time. So the idea is, like, let your breathing drive your efforts. Don't let your efforts dictate your breathing. And so if you're breathing purposefully to drive your effort level, then you're going to be able to push harder and longer. And it's just a more efficient way to do it. And so those are the two main ways that you can use your breathing on the trail. And then when you're done with that hard effort, right, now use your gears in reverse. And so as soon as you get to the top, right, can I shift down into second gear? Can I shift down into my easy gear? And so consciously trying to downshift your breathing after a hard effort is another thing that will really help you out. Like, this is one of the things that I've noticed myself in riding for, over the years, and riding with different levels of riders, is that the best riders are the ones who can recover the best between hard efforts, right? So someone may be faster in the beginning of a ride, but they start to get burned out, right? They have a hard effort and they don't really recover before the next one. And they start to, like, build this debt for themselves that they can't repay. And so by the end of the ride, they're really struggling, versus the rider who is able to recover, so you're got a hard climb and then a little reprieve from that, and then another hard climb, right? And so it's the ability to recover between those two hard efforts that is going to play a big role in your overall performance. It's not just how well you do during that one hard effort. Mountain biking is multiple hard efforts after another. And so being able to recover efficiently between those hard efforts on the trail is a super important part of performing well. And using your breathing gears to downshift is going to help you with that. So that is using your breathing on the trail. You can also, with that, have in here that you can tie your pedal strokes into your breathing. This is something that runners will do, right? Like, they'll breathe in to 4 paces and out to 6 paces. And so you can do something similar with the bike. It's a little tough to give you real specific numbers because a lot of it depends on what your cadence is, right? Are you spending a high RPM kind of, low tension, or are you doing a higher tension, slower RPM? And so the pedal strokes would be different, right? But, in general, like, an easy breathing gear would be like, 5 pedal strokes inhale, 5 or 6 exhale. You're looking at like 3 pedal strokes inhale and 1 or 2 exhale for the moderate gear. And then finally, like 1 or 2 inhale, 1 or 2 exhale. So again, just kind of modulating depending upon what your cadence is, but you can attach your breathing to your, your pedal strokes as a way to monitor, what is my breathing right now? Like what pace am I breathing at? So again, just something that you can use there. The next thing that I have here is competition. Now this is, again, I think this was actually ended up being like the longest section in the, program here. And so with this one, I go over my strategies that I've developed to help with competition. And so as you can see, what I do is I break it down into time zones, right? So where are we at in relation to the competition? And then that's going to dictate what my strategy is at that time. Because it's not just about, race day, it's about the time leading up to race day as well. And so, for example, just thinking about signing up for a competition can be stressful for people. And so what am I going to do there, right? So this is where just, a breathe light or something similar strategy. So, again, all this stuff kind of ties together. This is basically using the advice for stress and anxiety specifically for competition. So if you start to feel anxiety from competition, you're just thinking about signing up and you start to feel anxious about that, what's happening with your breathing? I'll bet you're starting to breathe faster. You're starting to do a little more chest breathing, right? Calm that down. Apply, some breathe light for a few minutes. See how that feels. Calm, and so having a strategy ready to use when you feel that anxiety is going to help you to be able to deal with that anxiety. And so, for a lot of people, it's not the actual competition that is the hard part. It's the time leading up to it, right? Like that's the most stressful time. And so if you can survive that time and come out of it, in a better mental state, you're going to perform better on race day itself. And so that's kind of the idea behind this. So, you're starting to feel stressed out, use the breathe light or some other breathing drill, like the tactics we were talking about in the stress and anxiety, to calm down and put yourself in a more calm and confident state, and then sign up for that race. Right. And so, after you sign up leading up to the competition, then same thing, you start to feel yourself feeling stressed out, start to employ breathing tactics to counteract that stress. But now you can also start to employ some visualization. And so for myself, what I advise you do is that you visualize yourself on the day of the competition, getting ready to start the competition, and you're there, you're feeling healthy, you're feeling confident, you're feeling calm, right? And so that's what you're visualizing, is that mental state, that mental and physical state right before you're about to compete. And so, because there's a lot of things you can't control, like once you start the race, right? Once the competition starts, it's up to the gods on some level. And so you can only control so much, but you can control up to that point. You can control that I am going to start this race in a calm, confident state, ready to perform my best, whatever that may be, today. And so, but using the visualization will help with that. And, using the breathing drills, getting yourself into a calm state, and then starting to use the visualization. And while you're visualizing it, you start to feel yourself getting anxious, right? Then you need to either calm back down or just stop the visualization process at that point, calm down, bring the stress levels back down, and then start again. But what you don't want to do is associate that point in time with a stressed mental state, right? So you don't want to be thinking about starting the competition and be feeling stressed as you're visualizing it, because it's going to be more likely that's what's going to happen on the day of the competition. And so it's really important that you're trying to associate this calm, confident state with the competition itself, right? So that is, what I recommend doing leading up to the competition. Now, the morning of the competition, this is where the superventilation technique comes in. So I think that's the next section, but this is where like the Wim Hof style breathing. Now, you can do this closer to the competition. Like some people recommend doing it actually like as close to the competition as you can, because you are blowing off that CO2, right? It does create an internal environment that theoretically could help you at the beginning of the competition. But for a lot of people, that's difficult to do. And so, myself included. So what I do is the morning of, I make sure that I do my superventilation, breathing session. And so again, this is, 30 to 40 big inhales and exhales, holding on the exhale, and then big inhale in and holding, right? So again, we'll talk about that more in detail here in a second, but that technique is going to, it's basically a shock stimulus, right? So we're using the stress breathing, we're holding our breath, like it is creating like this stressful environment for us. But what it does is it allows us to expose our body to this stress and this, fast-paced breathing before we start the competition. And there's just something about that, right? It just helps with the adrenaline dump that happens at the beginning of a competition, at the beginning of a race, if you've exposed your body to it on some level before that. And so that's where the superventilation breathing is really helpful with that. So on the day of the competition, right? So you're, again, anxiety and mindset, or anxiety and stress tactics. If you're starting to feel stressed, using your tactics for that. And then, as you're, looking here, yeah. At the venue, when you get to the venue, this is where you can start to use visualization more specifically for your competition, right? And so you can either, just see yourself running the whole course. There may be specific sections on the course that, like, man, I need to come in and I need to hit it like this, come in this way, go through the section this way, and set myself up for the next section this way, and visualizing yourself doing that. But again, you're not going to be able to control everything. So, you're not necessarily visualizing yourself winning, right? Because you'd like to, but that's not what you can only control so much. So you're visualizing the things that you can control. And that would be how you perform in these sections or whatever. And so, but again, the more realistic you can make it in your mind, the more it's going to feel like you've done it before when you actually get to that point. And so, but again, visualization is helpful there as well. And again, it's all about associating that calm, relaxed state with the, with those runs there. And then finally, when you're waiting to start, and this was something, I got this one from Steve Maxwell, and he was talking about jiu-jitsu competitions, and this helped him before jiu-jitsu competitions. And that was taking big inhales and exhales. And again, part of this is I'm blowing off extra CO2. And so I'm lowering those CO2 levels. So I'm gonna be able to push harder at the beginning before I start to trigger that feeling, or, that panicky feeling. So there's something physiological going on there. But mentally, what he was talking about was, as I breathe in, full inhale, right? And as I breathe in, it's all the good that I want, the courage, the positive thoughts, like, it's the good, the white light, right? Is how he described it, like the white light coming in. And so, and then as you breathe out, you're breathing out the bad. And he said he visualized like a black cloud, or, soot, like coming out of him. And this is all the bad stuff, the fear and doubt, and, the negative self-talk. And so you're breathing in the good and you're breathing out the bad, right? And in doing that, like preparing yourself that, as you're getting ready, right? You're within like, 10 minutes of actually starting the race, and you do that, and it's going to help you. It will help put you in a better mental state. You're going to feel physically better. You're going to feel mentally better. And so that's something that I've used myself and recommend that people employ as well. And so again, there's a psychological and a physiological strategy to that. And then finally, post-competition, if you can, besides just grabbing a beer, which is definitely one of the better parts of post-competition, take a few minutes, right? 5 to 10 minutes of the breathe light drill. And even if you do it when you get home, right? But just doing something to start to trigger yourself getting into that rest and relax, recover side of things will help, right? And so anyway, so there you go. That's the basic strategy for competition that I found helpful, and hopefully you guys will find helpful as well. So the next section here is the fire breathing. And again, I've talked about this already, so I'll just kind of touch on it here. But the superventilation is, again, it's been popularized by Wim Hof. The Wim Hof method incorporates like cold exposure and some other things as well, but the breathing is a part of it. I believe this is also called Tumo breathing or fire breathing. There's a couple different monikers that this style of breathing goes by. But what it basically is it's purposeful hyperventilation, right? And so superventilation is the name of the XPT. One of the courses that I did gave it, and I like that name, so that's why I use it. But you are breathing in, big inhale. Right. And so it's just that's it. It's a hyperventilation. And so you're doing 30 to 40 of those. And then when you're done, you on the exhale. Now for me, I'll tell you, like, I actually have a little thing. So I get to the end, I'll do 40, right? I'll take a big breath in and I'll just, and I'll purposefully try to push all the air out on my last breath, right? And then I'll take a big inhale and then a relaxed exhale and I'll hold, right? So I'll get to that 40 or 30, right? So I go 29, 30, and then I'll exhale as much as I can. And then inhale. So I guess I end up doing like one more breath than what I count, right? So I'll count 30, but I'll end up doing 31 or 40, and I'll end up doing 41. And I don't know why. That's just something that I found to be helpful. Another thing that I like to do is before I do my session is to do 3 full inhales and exhales in through the nose. And just keep, when you get to the top, and just trying to sniff in as much air as you can. And then just like, and full inhale. So just inhale as much as you can, sip in more air, and then just push it all out, push it all out, push it all out. Do that 3 times. Then I'll start my breathing cycle, my first breathing cycle, right? 30 big breaths. Then I'll, when I get to the 30, I do the one more time, big exhale, then normal inhale and exhale. So you hold on the exhale. When you're doing these, you're holding on the exhale. It's going to build the CO2 up faster. And so you're just sitting there relaxed. When you start to get that urge to breathe again, this is not a maximum push yourself as hard as you can thing. You take a big breath in and you hold. And you hold that for like 10, 15 seconds, just count it out in your head. And then when you're done, let that out. And then you repeat. So big breath in and out. Right, get to the end. Push it out, in, and relax. Hold, then you big inhale, hold, and then out, right? So there's, so many, if you look up Wim Hof, he's got a great app that you can download that will take you through this style of breathing. There's a ton of online videos of people taking you through this type of breathing. And so it's not that complicated, right? Like, don't overthink it. Like, you got more than enough information between what I just explained to you and what you have here to do it. So, but I will say that I would recommend that you guys do spend a few weeks doing the breathe light and other breathing drills before you start doing the superventilation stuff. It's just, if you have some breathing dysfunctions, especially biomechanical breathing dysfunctions, you want to iron those out a little bit, at least in my opinion, iron them out a little bit before you start jumping into this kind of more advanced breathing technique. And again, this is another one that if you've got any sort of medical conditions, you're pregnant, high blood pressure, anything like that, this is not the one for you. And again, it's not that it's dangerous. It's just that it can exacerbate certain conditions. And we don't want to do that if we don't have to. So after the superventilation, we've got the last couple sections, which is our CO2 tolerance, or our breathing gears, and then our CO2 tolerance workouts. And so the breathing gear intervals, I've already explained a little bit about the breathing gear concept, right? You've got the 3 different gears. And what the breathing gear intervals have you do is you go through 30 seconds in the easy gear. So in through the nose, out through the nose, like a 4-6 pace, is a good cadence, 5-5, something like that. But you're going to go for 30 seconds, easy. And then you're going to, after that 30 seconds, you shift your breathing to the second gear, to the 2-1 mouth-nose breathing. And you're going to shift your breathing and your effort level, right? So instead of going harder and then waiting to breathe harder. It's like we were talking about, with the using your breathing on the trail, using your breathing to drive your effort level. That's what the breathing gear intervals are helping you learn how to do. Is like, when I need to go harder, I'm going to start breathing harder right away instead of waiting, right? And so you start breathing harder and going harder at the same time. You do that for 20 seconds at the moderate gear. And then finally you go to the hard gear, which is the mouth breathing, the big inhales and exhales. And this is your hardest gear. And so again, you shift your breathing and your effort level up at the same time. And then when you're done with 10 seconds of that, you're going to recover, you downshift. When you're able to get back to your first gear, and nose breathing at that, at your cadence that you've picked out, then you start over. Okay, 30 seconds at that, then 20 seconds at the moderate gear, and then 10 seconds at the hard gear. That's pretty much it. That's it right there. So they're about a minute long, right? It's just you're shifting gears throughout that minute in a very purposeful fashion. And so I would recommend starting with 3 of these, and you can build up to as many as 10. Right. But you just want to make sure that you're, maintaining that effort level. Again, if you're using something that can measure like your speed or your power output, if you notice those things dropping off, if you're at like set number 5 and you'd said, I want to do 10, and you see those things dropping off, you're best just stopping. And at that point, and then, because at that point you're just reinforcing poor power and technique and stuff, right? So but anyway, so you want to make sure the quality is driving that. It's not always doing more is better, making sure the quality is there as well. So those are that's how to do the breathing gear intervals. Again, pretty straightforward there. And then finally you got your CO2 tolerance workouts, and these are our breath hold intervals. And so with these, you are, again, pretty straightforward. You're going for 5 strong breath holds. And again, it's what the research shows. 5 strong breath holds are going to trigger the what we're looking for. And something with these that'll also help is using an O2 meter to measure your oxygen levels. And so as you're what we're shooting for is to drop our O2 saturation down to 85% or lower. Right. And so that's going to trigger the internal environment, or create the internal environment that's going to trigger the changes that we're looking for. Again, it's also called altitude simulation training by some people, because at 85% or lower, it's the same as being at altitude. Like 85% is roughly the equivalent of being at 14,000 feet. And so, if you're able to drive it lower than that, great. But that's kind of what we're looking for. Another thing to keep in mind with these is that as you start them, that you're going to you may not be able to drive your O2 levels down that low at first. It may take you a couple weeks of doing this before you're able to do that, but that's totally normal, totally fine. You're still gaining benefits from the breath holds. Remember, just doing the breath holds themselves are improving the strength of the respiratory muscles. Like, it's literally an isometric contraction going on there. Like, your breathing muscles still want to go, but you're purposefully stopping them. And so breath holds have been shown to increase, the strength of the respiratory muscles, whereas regular cardio has not. And so even if you're not getting the O2 levels down that low, just doing the breath holds is going to help with that. So the way that we do this, you've got 2 different styles, right? The first style is you're using a kind of a cardio training method, like running or riding. If you've got your bike on a trainer, I think I mentioned in the video for this section that if you are going to use your bike and you're not going to be on a trainer, that you don't want to do this on the trail, right? Like, just do it on the road or a bike path or something where the only thing that you have to think about is just balancing and riding and doing the breath hold. And again, there is always the chance when you're doing this that if you trigger, you get your O2 levels down below 50%, you can black out. And so you do need to be conscious of that and careful about that. So if you are going to do this on your bike and you're not going to do it on your trainer and you're out in the wild, so to speak, you don't want to be like trying to drive yourself to as hard as you possibly can with this and risk something. So again, generally these things are safe. I haven't blacked out. I've never seen anybody black out, but it is possible, right? So you just want to be aware of that as you're doing these. But what you're going to do is you're just going to get whatever your chosen method is, and you're going to start going and hold your breath on the exhale, right? So normal breath in, normal breath out, and hold, and then go. And so you're going to go until you trigger a strong air hunger, a strong urge to breathe. Now, again, now with this one, we do want to try to hold it, right? We start to feel it and you try to relax into the suffocation. You want to drive yourself into that air hunger a little bit before you give into it. And so at level 1 with these things, with the CO2 tolerance workouts, when you're done, you just start normal nose breathing, right? You drive yourself into that strong air hunger. Then you just start normal nose breathing, and you got your O2 meter, put it on, see what's going on. When you see your O2 levels have recovered back up to the 95 to 99% that's normal, then you can do your next interval. When you've done that for a bit and you're getting used to that, then you can take it to the next level, the level 2 part of the workout, where now when you trigger that strong air hunger and you start to breathe, we're going to do some little flicker breaths, as I call them. And we're going to try to drive that CO2 up even higher, the O2 levels down just a little bit more before we start regular breathing. So again, we've held on the exhale. And now if a normal breath in is like, right, that's like a normal breath. These are just like, right? So we're going to do like 6 of these little flicker breaths. And the idea is you're breathing just enough to get the diaphragm moving a little bit, get a little bit of air going in to kind of calm that panicky air hunger feeling down, but you're not getting enough going to actually start repaying the oxygen debt or getting rid of the CO2 and getting the O2 levels back up. So you're going to end up driving them, the O2 levels down a little bit more, the CO2 levels up just a little bit more when you do that. But again, I suggest that you do a few sessions without doing that, and then you start adding that in as a way to make it harder, right? And so the other way that you can do this is with some sort of like calisthenics type exercise. So, bodyweight squats make a great option. Jumping jacks or seal jacks, right, where you're clapping the hands in front of you instead of coming over the head, are a great option. You could, run in place. I mean, these are good options if you don't have access to some type of cardio equipment or you are really short on space. Then you can do some of these other things, right? Like push-ups. If you're really strong with push-ups, you can do like 20 plus push-ups. Push-ups might be a good option for you. Jump squats. So there's all sorts of different, not all sorts. I'd say there's probably like 10 or so options that are really good options for you. But what I do is the jumping jacks. Like I don't mess around with different things. I like doing the jumping jacks. The jumping jacks work really well for me. For me, it takes about like 15 to 20 jumping jacks to trigger that strong air hunger and gets my O2 levels down pretty good. And so that works, really well for me. So if you're, but you just pick some sort of calisthenics type exercise. Now you don't want to add weight, right? We don't want to be adding load to any of these or doing like a loaded exercise. Because again, we are holding our breath while we're doing these. And so holding your breath while you're lifting and putting yourself under load can have some problems there. And so we don't want to do that. So that's pretty much it on the CO2 tolerance workouts here. And which brings us to the end of the program manual. So we've covered all the different sections here. We've gone through the assessment, hopefully giving you guys a little bit better idea of some of the drills, how to do them and the purpose behind them. Like I said, I did have a couple of questions that came in. I did actually address them throughout the webinar here. One was regarding blood pressure. And again, just to reiterate, if you have high blood pressure, then you just want to avoid the breath holds. Anything that involves a breath hold, you don't want to do. The other stuff like the mouth taping at night, the breathe light drill, and again, just like, being conscious of your breathing, trying to use nose breathing as much as possible. All of these things you can still use. And again, I've talked to your doctor before you do any of this stuff. I'm not a doctor, so, want to get clearance from them. But in general, there shouldn't be any problem with doing these other exercises, and they should be able to help out. And on an interesting side note, isometric exercises have been shown in several studies to have a positive impact on blood pressure, which is, kind of surprising. You wouldn't, it makes sense when you think about it, but a lot of people would think that isometrics might be bad for blood pressure as well, but they're actually not. And so, and isometrics are also a great way to use your breathing to drive your tension, right? So my atomic strength training program, I show you the ramping isometric method where you're using the breathing gears along with your tension. And so it's a great way to kind of take your breathing and learn how to apply it in the weight room as well. But the cool thing is that it can have a positive impact on your blood pressure. So using some isometric exercises or like the atomic strength training program might be able to help improve your blood pressure to the point that you're able to do the breath hold drills and things like that. And so the second question was about the mouth taping with a beard or a mustache. And so, like I said, you should still be able to do that even with that. So that brings us to the end. We've gone a little over here. So appreciate everybody that's hung on with me. A lot of information to cover here. Trying to cover this in like 30 minutes or less is really difficult, especially all of this. So, hopefully this has been informative and helped you guys out. I did want to let you know that if you do want some personalized help, and I'll be sending an email out about this as well, but I am offering a discounted rate on your first private coaching session. So basically, I usually charge $150 an hour for private coaching. I'm offering people who bought the Better Breathing program a 50% discount. So it'd be $75 for a private coaching session. But with that, I could, again, personally take you through the assessment, watch you do it, let you know what I see, take you through the breathing drills, just give you more confidence in if you have any questions or anything like that, help you with any specific situation that you might have. So again, I'm available via email. So if you can email me, if it's something I can answer via email, then, shoot me an email and I'll help you out. I want to make sure that you're getting the information you need, but I know some people like to get a little bit more hands-on, a little more personalized help when they're doing stuff like this. So I wanted to extend that discount to people who've invested in the Better Breathing program if they're interested in doing that. Again, it's not an obligation. It's not like I say first, it's not like you're obligated to continue doing more after that. I just meant like, you want to do one, it's, 50% off. If you want to continue doing stuff after that, we can talk about that. But, for most people, a single private coaching session goes a long ways towards helping them feel more confident with what they're doing and just answer any questions that they may have. And then finally, I just want to ask for your feedback on the program. And so it's really important to me that I get feedback on it because one, it helps me make this program better and better future programs. And also if you have a positive experience with this program and you can send me some feedback, a testimonial that I can use to help other riders, they can see your story and identify with that. And then they'll be more likely to maybe want to try this. And so, my goal is to help as many riders as I can. And so, having stories from people who've used the program and had success with it definitely helps me out with that as well. And plus, it's just, I like to hear that, right? Like I like to write these programs, but I do this because I do want to help people. And so getting feedback from people and saying like, hey, this helped me out, in this way or that way, it really makes it worth it for me. So appreciate any feedback that you can send my way with that. So that's going to do it. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up. So again, if anybody has any questions, you got access to me at james@bikejames.com. Once again, I appreciate everybody that took the time to join me live here. If you're watching the recording, I appreciate you taking the time to watch this as well. And enjoy the program, and I will talk to everybody later.